Alright, dann schönen guten Tag alle zusammen, because I'm ursprünglich aus Deutschland, also Deutsch funktioniert auch. Und bevor ich es an meinen wundervollen Kollegen gebe, wo wir auch unseren Talk auf Englisch halten werden, wenn ihr die Slides haben wollt, da kommt ein QR-Code am Ende. Ihr braucht keine Fotos zwischendurch machen. Das so viel sei gesagt. Und Sander, let's give it a go.
Yeah, I'm going to continue in English because I want to give a presentation and not make a comedy show out of this. My German is horrible. I do understand it. I just don't speak it. This talk came to play because we work as consultants, right? So we have the standard consultant answer to basically any of your questions would be, it depends. So you'll see that a lot if you have any questions. Speaking of which, there's the mic. Feel free during the presentation. You don't have to wait until the end. If you have any questions in between, feel free to raise your hand and we'll get the mic over. But this talk came to play because during our consultancy gigs, we saw the same thing over and over happening again, where there seems to be not really a focus on what's actually most valuable right now. And one of the first questions that's being skipped is, why is Scrum valuable to our company, right? People just start with Scrum because they see it on LinkedIn, because it's cool. And to be fair, I use my LinkedIn as Facebook as well, just drop everything they can possibly do when it comes to Scrum and agility. And that's how many organizations see Scrum work, because the competitor does it, because it seems like a Harry Potter magic wand that's going to fix all of our issues, but unfortunately that's not true. We need to think a whole lot differently. But before going into the actual content, I would like to check in with the audience. How much experience we have in the room. Who's like, I have no experience with Scrum whatsoever. I just happened to walk by and the other rooms were filled, so I figured to join this one. No experience? A year to 2 years? Ish, doubtedly.
Not sure yet.
3 to 4? And who's like above 5 years and you're like, get off the stage, we'll do this for you?
We can switch. Let's sit down.
All right. Over time, we've come to uncover the same thing over and over again. And what we've also uncovered, this is a corporate disease. It's more of a mindset disease, and that's the whole thing. That's what we would like you to think about or to take away out of this little presentation that we have here. So thank you very much for spending a little bit of your valuable time with us. And B, we hope that we can inspire you in a little way to rethink the mindset that you have in the organizations that you're working with. Because if there's something that we both have discovered, because we're slightly loopy in that sense, we started doing all kinds of bets that changes our mindset. For instance, currently we're doing a weird bet who loses the most weight until we reach 90 kilograms first. So the winner gets a bottle of whiskey. It's a horrible thing, but it's a mindset change that drives the necessity and that gets to results. And that's the thing that we would like you guys to take away from this presentation. Change your mindset, and that ultimately is a lot more valuable and creates the actual value rather than executing any framework or doing exercises. Really the mindset that needs to change. Tom.
Yeah, and that's why we want to talk about golden nuggets today. Who has an idea what is a golden nugget? So what is it for you? Do you have an idea, roughly? Yeah, it's not something you find in the river. Could be, but that's not what we mean. We actually mean something which is valuable for your organization, which is valuable for yourself. So at the end, the core idea of Scrum is that we iterate and always create value to our customer, right? So this is this little golden nugget we want to trigger in your head, you actually try to find. But what is the issue? Where do we get stuck? I mean, the title of the talk is, there's always the next sprint. It sounds logical, right? So we are in a Scrum setting, we have a sprint, then we have another sprint, we have another sprint, because cadence is key. Simplicity is the key. That's why we have a clear cadence. There's a sprint, then there's the next sprint, and then there's the next sprint. But have you ever seen an athlete sprinting and then directly sprinting again? Probably not, because they do their best for 100 meter, for 200 meter, and that's it. And then they stop. But we expect our teams, our organizations to sprint, and by the way, don't breathe, directly sprint again. And that creates a challenge. But what are the symptoms, and what are the symptoms each of you can see in your organization, probably? That's what we'll talk about first, and then we give you a little bit of solutioning. So no worries, we're not just pointing out symptoms, we also have a couple of solutions. But what is the first symptom?
First question to you guys basically is, what's the purpose of Scrum?
Structure the work.
Mm,
Bringing the dynamic.
almost, yeah. Why?
Continuous improvement.
Yeah, why is that important? Yes, exactly. The delivery of value, and by doing so, limit risk. So diminish the amount of risk that you have so you can actually deliver valuable pieces of work in product, whatever product that you're working on. Usually we get hired and the first thing that we hear is we want to save money and we want to develop faster. Those might be results of the actions and the decisions that you make, but it's definitely not the purpose of Scrum itself. And with that, that's already where your mindset starts to skew. One of those things that we see way too often is blind spillover. So at the end of every single sprint, right, so these time box periods of maximum of a month, we have work left. And then what do we do with that? Just chuck it to the next sprint.
Yeah.
Don't think about this.
Yeah. How many people have you ever clicked not on the button, put it in the next sprint in Jira? 1, 2, 3. That's actually quite good. We have audience where everyone just puts it in the next sprint. But why do we do that? Because it's simple, right? We don't want to replan again. We just shuffle it into the next sprint because it was valuable in the last sprint, so it must be valuable in the next sprint, right? Or we have started it. So some people just always put it in the next sprint.
Exactly. So that dilutes the focus. If we don't focus on what's most valuable, we can do it in the next sprint, right? We have it here, there's work, there's stuff to do. So let's just pick it up in the next sprint. I mean, it's there, it's in the backlog, so why not finish it? Who has an idea of what their sprint goals are? Well, roughly, sort of, ish.
Yeah, sort of issues. Do you like to explain?
Yeah, well, we try to set the sprint goal every sprint, but like, you know, the definition should be pretty clear and it should be, distinct, and you should have a clear idea of what this means. But in reality, it's often so and so. I mean, it's a sprint goal, but it's a little bit too soft, maybe, so that you can't really tell, like, what did I achieve that goal? Yes, no. It's not something that you can really measure where you say, like, okay, I achieved that 100%.
And that sort of confirms this statement, right? The lack of plans, or the lack of goals. Now, sprint goals, that's one. Let's take it a step further. Who has an idea what their product goals are? There are a few hands that's starting to drop.
So what is a product goal for you? Do you want to elaborate?
What's the product goal is?
No, what is a product goal for you? How would you describe a product goal?
Product goal, something that takes me one step closer to the product vision.
Yeah. Sounds simple, right? But a lot of organizations don't have it.
No. Then, third step. Who has an idea about their company vision? There usually are a little bit more. And why? Because that's mostly published on the corporate website. Mostly. But that's where you start seeing a vacuum, if you will. It comes from the book, The Professional Product Owner by Ralph Jocham and Don McGreal. Sprint goals, like what are we doing in this sprint in the coming week, maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks. That's usually a little bit clear. The company vision that's been published on the website, but all the gap in between. How do we connect the work that we're currently doing to whatever we're trying to achieve as a company? That usually lacks. So we're basically just running around like headless chickens because we don't know how to connect these three. That's what they call the product management vacuum. Connecting the sprint goals to product vision. How does the work that we are currently doing impact us on the longer term, and how does this help the company get to where they want to be? And because of that lack, we don't know where we're really going towards. Bringing us to the third one.
Yes, marshmallow backlogs. Because what is the easiest thing to do? Let's put it in the backlog. Let's write it down because we don't want to lose this wonderful idea. We need it. It will save our company. So we put it in the backlog. We probably refine it once, then something else is coming in. Because everyone is allowed to write in the backlog, right? So the backlog is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And what we see quite often in an organization is exactly this. The time stuff is sitting in your backlog just gets longer. So I have seen organizations where we opened the backlog which is well refined and groomed. I found stuff which is 3 years old. What was it about? I don't know. He's not longer working here. We just didn't want to lose the idea because it's such a great idea. okay, 3 years in the backlog, and it's a great idea, that doesn't add up. But organizations are doing it, and we see it quite often. So we just put it there because it's documented, right? It's somewhere. And then the next thing which is happening it's in the backlog, so it might be valuable, so we really need to have output, right? So the next thing that people are doing is they're creating feature factories, because as long as we create new feature, it's great, right? It's something new for the customer. We can talk to our stakeholders. There are 5 new features released this month. Last month, 10 new features, and so forth, and so forth, and so forth. But the team is starting to do this. They don't care any longer, because we learned already we are not checking against any goals, because we don't have them. The backlog is crazy long, and no one actually has an overview about our backlog. And the management said, produce, output, output, output. So here's a new feature. Do we need it? No. I had a client meeting a couple of weeks ago where the team was really under pressure for the release. And then we released the feature, we did a little demo, and then the senior stakeholder said, great feature, I will use that next year. Wait a second, what? Yeah, next year, the client is not ready yet. But you push that to deliver, yeah, because you promised. Great reflection on the process. But it happens so often. And I think there's another thing which happens quite often.
Yeah, to riff on this, to continue on this, it impacts the sense of purpose that people have. Who has read, by any chance, Daniel Pink's Drive, The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us? A couple of hands. So he did some research. I can highly recommend it. It's a very cheap book. And a good one, by the way. Not important,
but
not unimportant.
Cheap.
Yeah, started with cheap. But there are 3 main motivators in complex work that motivates people: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And if people understand the transcendent purpose, why their work contributes to making the lives of either the stakeholders or whatever group that they are serving, how that impacts their lives and what they contribute to, the awareness and the satisfaction of the people and the employees goes up. People want to understand why their work matters. I'm a father of 3, and if I ask my kids to do something, what's the first question that I'm going to get? Why? Exactly. Because inherently people want to know why they should be doing things. If you create these mindless zombies just cramming out stuff, the morale goes down really fast. And that creates a sense of necessity, and that's the next thing that we come to, is fixed yearly budgeting. Now let's take a step back to early 2019. No one could have predicted, or no one, a lot of people could not have been predicting that we would be working from home the way that we're currently doing. If I would go up to my manager and ask, could I work a day from home tomorrow? He's like, work from what? The necessity that the pandemic and that the lockdowns created drive creativity. And that's the same thing in workplaces. Necessity drives creativity. So if people understand what is the consequence, so whether that's, for instance, like what happened to Kodak and Blockbuster and Nokia, that they get outcompeted, if they understand what the impact is, if they either do or do not make any certain decisions, they're more inclined to work in a creative way. And if people are budgeted for an entire year and they don't have to think about, well, the next sprint is granted anyway, so who cares? You create more of those feature factories inherently again. If you go more into in the mindset of a startup, for instance, that is reliant on the impact that angel investors make. So we're going to fund you for 3 sprints for now, and we'll check out whatever outcome that you've been creating in those 3 sprints. And if it has value, if it has actual value, then maybe we'll do some more sprints. But just granting budget when people don't have to think about it, it takes away the necessity.
And how many people of you check, was the sprint worth it? So how often did you figure out how expensive is one sprint and how much value we have created? How often did you do that? 1 person? Really good. 2? We normally have 0, so quite impressed. Quite often we don't do it. And we even have seen organizations, yeah, it's CapEx. If we use less than last year, we get less budget. So let's just use it as it is without thinking about it because we don't want to get less. That's quite often the behavior. And this behavior is something which is actually not in line with what we all try to achieve. It's something contradicting. But one of the greatest arguments I had heard from a CFO actually said, well, but fixed budgeting is great. I only have one budget, simple, and they will make worth out of it. And I said, yeah, but are you actually checking it? I'm the CFO, I don't care. As long as they don't want to have more money, I'm fine. Okay, not a company I want to buy from, but good, they are still alive somehow-ish, I think. But there's something else we also need to take a look for.
Last symptom, I think, last one.
Yeah.
Working with crystal balls. How many people are expected to create roadmaps? A bit more. How many people know what you're going to eat in February? Get the mic, I'm curious. Oh, that's the thing, right? I'm not even going to try to repeat that. But that's the thing. We get expected to create roadmaps. Like, what are you going to deliver at the end of the year? Well, we don't know what's going to happen. There are so many factors that influence the way that we work, the way that we deliver. Stakeholders changing their mind. There comes a new, I don't know, ChatGPT, for instance, that's going to influence the way forward that we work. Gojko Adzic is going to close the day off with a interesting talk about ChatGPT. But all those kind of factors, they influence the way that we can predict, and the more close it is into the future, the better our prediction is going to be. But if we have to create roadmaps and have to plan for all the complexity that we have and all the factors that could possibly affect our way to deliver value, the probability that these roadmaps are shite at best is pretty high.
Yeah. And we now talked about a lot of symptoms, and everyone was nodding. It's the typical, yeah, I mean, that's obvious. What are the guys talking about? I see that, I know that, that's obvious. But we have overall 6 symptoms. How many of you experience at least 2 every day in their day-to-day work? Who of you is actually aware of them day-to-day, if you experience them? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay. Who is actually doing something against it? 1, 2, 3. More than which are aware of it. That's interesting.
I wasn't aware of it, but I'm going to do something about it anyway.
Okay, good.
That's called proactive, huh?
Yeah, okay, we let it slide, but what can you do? What can you change in your behavior to actually get rid of it? So what are good starting points? What are the things you can do in your day-to-day? This is something we now want to elaborate on. And I think you will take the first one, right?
But why should I change?
I think it's boring for the teams, or it's obvious because everyone tries to fix, even people which are not aware of it try to fix. But what do you think? Why should we fix it?
I don't know, because there's money.
Yeah, oh, you see there's money, fixed budget, we just do it. No, because what we really want to achieve, and this is something we all started with, is that we have a customer focus, we are aware of the things, we're getting out of the day-to-day. Why do we have sprints? Why do we have these time boxes? To not get lost in 5, 4, 3-year projects where we don't know when it starts, when it ends, 5 people change in between because someone goes on parental leave, someone is leaving the company, someone is joining the company. We have short time boxes because we want to have this focus. We want to watch on things. We want to have happy teams which are not sprinting every time again. And this is what we're aiming for, I hope. But let's check.
One further.
One further? Already?
Yes,
okay.
So we wouldn't exactly want to create focus on the present. So imagine that halfway through our sprint, the plug gets pulled out of a development. If we work in waterfall idea, so we're just analyzing this sprint. The next sprint, we're developing something, and then we're testing. If we would pull the plug at this moment, there would be no value. So think about what is the most valuable thing to our customer. I don't know who was here in front that said customer focus, but exactly that. What is the most valuable thing, the problem, the smallest problem that we can solve with the means that we have today, with the resources that we have right now? And with resources, I do not mean people. That's a whole different rant. But really focus on what should we focus, what can we create that is of the most valuable thing right now. It is really easy to go back to those marshmallow backlogs and just continue to push out work because there is work, because our backlogs are so full, the stakeholders are shouting that they want this, but doesn't really help us get to our goals. To give you an example of this, I was working at a world's leading sports manufacturer, let's keep it at that. And we had a very persistent group of stakeholders. They continuously said, I want to have this feature because it's going to make my life so much easier. While my product owner had the mentality, he had one rule, and it was always no, unless you can convince me otherwise. So if stakeholders come up to him and ask, I would like to have this specific feature, no, unless you have a proper business case. So months of nagging and nagging and nagging, and ultimately he caved. The entire team of 15 people spent 3 months building this feature, and they created a little metric in there called Feature Usage Index, so we can measure how often it was actually being used. In half a year, it was used once. They are shouting, those stakeholders, that they really need it. Product owner says no, because it doesn't help us contribute to our goals. And if you just keep pushing stuff out, you end up in this situation, where you create more fluff into the product. So really focus on what's most valuable right now, what's going to create that stepping stone towards our product goals. So first figure out what your product goals are, and how can we get there? Create a strategy. This is where we want to be in 3 to 9 months from now. Create little stepping stones of increments and goals, how we can achieve those product goals and how they help us down the line as a company.
Yeah, and also be honest with yourself, because that's the next thing you want to talk about. If you focus on one thing a sprint, you really have a clear focus. It can be anything. It can also be changed person by person. So for example, some people say, yeah, we have a focus for the team up, but I'm the Scrum Master. Yeah, but what is your focus for the next sprint? What is the one thing you want to change, you want to act on in the next sprint? I have 25 embedments I will act on. No, pick one, pick two. You actually can make progress on, and not pick everything. The other thing is, and for that we need to be honest with ourselves, is embracing empiricism for achieving your goals. So for example, so often I see product owners, teams, organizations, yeah, we didn't achieve our goal the last time, but we have 5 reasons for that. We really will do it this time. No. If you haven't achieved your goal the last 5 sprints, you will not achieve it in the 6th sprint. Something is off. So be honest with your history, be honest with the things you see, you learn, especially also around velocity, right? So I have seen product owners which say, yeah, well, our velocity is actually around 30 story points, but this sprint we will do 50. Why? How? Huh? But these questions, these pushback, these discussions, they need to happen. And you need to be honest with yourself. We haven't achieved it in the past. Why haven't we achieved it? So it should be 30. Maybe it should be even less this time, because we really want to achieve it and not just over-promising and over-committing. But one reason why a lot of people, a lot of teams are doing it, it's always easier to apologize later than asking for permissions at the beginning. Because then it's too late anyway. Yeah, sorry, we didn't achieve it. So my bad. Rather than, yeah, we don't think we will make it. We really need to do less story points. We need to be honest with ourselves. Let's take a look on the data. Let's see what we actually can achieve, and then work with that.
And velocity, for instance, you mentioned velocity. Velocity is so easy to game, right? If anyone uses, I'm assuming, the industry standard, the adjusted Fibonacci sequence, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and so on. I was working with an airport over in the Netherlands, and they just came out of a contract negotiation with a vendor that would insist that in their contract they would state that if they would achieve a higher velocity than they forecasted, they would get 20% bonus. That's easy money.
Yeah, let's tweak the scale.
Coming back to metrics, just saw Stephanie walk in. Stephanie Gush, she had a very interesting talk about metrics for Scrum Masters. So if you want to know more about that, go check that out.
Yeah, and the next thing is probably also a little bit of a sad thing, because if you want to hear this talk again, because it's so great, you will not be able to next year, because we will let go of this talk next year. Because what we will do is kill our darlings. And exactly the same should a product owner or a team do. If it's in the backlog, if it's old, no one is actually doing it, well, let go of it. Take it out of the backlog, delete it, make a comment, just let go. Because it cannot be that valuable if you haven't acted on it for years or for months. And it's also sometimes the same thing with how often I sit with a client or with a team down, yeah, sorry, we have started it. I already worked 2 months on it. So it's already invested, right? So now let's just finish it. I mean, I'm from Germany. We have a wonderful airport in the capital city by now, you know. And my girlfriend is a civil engineer. Her professor said 2006, we should just stop. Let go of it. Stupid idea, will never work. Well, I think 12 to 15 years later. It's open by now. We have a couple of issues with it, but we couldn't let go of the darling. It's the same with the teams. If it's no longer valuable, if you really think you shouldn't do it, let go of it. Don't do it. It's the same with clicking this stupid button in Jira. Maybe we can convince Atlassian to let go of it, put it into the next sprint, instead of putting it back to the backlog. Because every sprint, this is our focus, this is our idea. We should take a look what we like to do, what is valuable, and how can we create outcome, actual outcome, and not, it's my darling, I want to keep it, it's so important. The same with your feature from the stakeholder. I really want it, but is it valuable? No.
Very good. Netflix has a tool called Chaos Monkey. What Chaos Monkey does, it just disrupts the entire product. So it just pulls a random plug or breaks a specific part of code just to see how resilient Netflix, the service, would be. And by now, Netflix has become a necessity for life, so the service must continuously go on. Not too long ago, it pulled a plug on an entire data warehouse just to see what would happen. Now, you as Scrum Masters or Agile coaches or product owners or whatever you're doing, you could be like that Chaos Monkey as well. Go through your backlog and just pull a random product backlog item out. See what happens. If stakeholders don't start shouting within a week, then probably it's not really valuable.
Yeah, and exactly this is something you also should embrace, this uncertainty. Because why are we doing Scrum? What is the core idea? You probably all heard the keynote, so the world is going faster, the world is going on a crazy, crazy speed. Things are changing all the time. But the one thing we apparently all like to have is certainty. This is what I do next week, this is what I do next year. Like you said, what do we eat?
Roadmaps.
In February. I mean, okay, if we are in Munich, the people do always the same thing in October. I can agree to that. But still, actually embrace the change, embrace the uncertainty. You can't know what you don't know. But we so often try to figure that out, shake the crystal ball, and I know it, it will happen. No, we don't.
But I have a question to this roadmap stage.
Yes.
Give 2 seconds for the mic so people in the back can hear you.
Yeah. My question is, don't we need roadmaps to visualize our product visions? And for me, a roadmap is alive and always changing in the same speed as the product backlog.
I 100% agree with you. Like, this roadmap should continuously evolve. Yeah, that's a mindset thing that we rarely see in the consulting that we do. Like, these roadmaps are fixed. Yeah, you promised me that you're going to deliver something in 9 months from now, so I'm expecting you to actually deliver this. No, a roadmap is nothing else than a forecast. With the knowledge that we have right now, we're creating this, but this thing continuously evolves as we learn more over time. So you're 100% correct. Yeah.
But this is also the misunderstanding, and this is also what you should check with everyone who shared the roadmap. Okay, what is your understanding of the roadmap? Yeah, that I will get it next year. Time out. That we have the idea it can be valuable next year. And to also create transparency for the teams or organizations around us. That's totally fine. But I have worked with a client and I had a really cool product owner who would say, well, I put it on a roadmap. It might come next year. If it come in 2 years, I don't know yet what else is coming in. But I put it on a roadmap just to create transparency about it. And this is a good roadmap. Really fixing it, well, that's not the case. But we also need to fund it in somehow, right?
Does that help, by the way? Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Cool. Just as mentioned, changing the way that you fund your products or your projects, whatever you're doing, in a more agile fashion does help create more of a necessity that people really think about what is most valuable now. If we are guaranteed for just these, let's say 3 sprints, and people really are passionate about the product, they will invest their time and their interest in doing the most important things right now. We've seen this over and over again with the clients that we have. They are funded for more than a year, so they can basically sit back. I'm not saying that you should create agile quicksand, that people are afraid of getting fired. No, not by any means, but at least a little bit more of a feeling of necessity, that there are consequences with someone else's money.
And don't do this, don't count your money, right? So really think about, okay, we have another sprint, we have another iteration, can we create an outcome which is actually valuable? And whenever we have this, let's say, solution for the crowd at a conference, right afterwards, someone is coming to me, but that puts pressure on the teams. Well, maybe a little bit at the beginning, but having awareness that the work they do costs money is actually quite a good thing. It's the same what you do with your kids if you give them pocket money, right? You say, here you have €10, but by the way, well, I have to work for that, la 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 la, not there's a free flow. And a lot of organizations, a lot of teams think, well, I get paid as long as I'm here. If I don't fuck it up, all good. Yeah, but they get money for a reason, to do something good. And that's why agile budgeting, really iterate, makes a lot of sense. And we also see it with agile transformations, that the people say, yeah, it's funded now, and we expect you to be done. Well, with agile transformation, I prefer to call it agile evolution. Are we actually done? We can have a result. Yes, probably hopefully it's a valuable result, but we don't know yet.
And this is a relationship as well. It doesn't just put pressure on the Scrum team itself, but it should put a little pressure on your stakeholders as well. They are investing their money. Their voice is critical to the success of the product that you are building for them. So they should be involved in the entire development effort, whether that's in sprint reviews or in quarterly meetings, as long as they really have their voice heard and you create a relationship. It's not just a one-dimensional thing. Here, dear team, build this for me, and I go back to my ivory tower. Now it's a working relationship. Equally, we have seen teams that make so many bugs into their product, they are called Bugs Bunny.
Yeah. And the other thing we see quite often, we get measured by the number of features or story points we are doing in a sprint. As mentioned by Sander, we already had a really nice talk about metrics today. Counting the number of features at the end of a sprint is probably not a good metric. But I would say in 8 out of 10 cases at my client work, I see it. Yes, this sprint it was 10 features. Last sprint it was 15 features. Why was it less? Blah, blah, blah. Without really checking, are the features valuable? So for example, I had once a team which said, we will not do anything this sprint except this one feature. Everyone is working on this one feature because it's a great functionality. That's a good understanding. This is creating actual outcome for the team, for the customer, for the end user, and also for stakeholders. But having this understanding, let's focus on the most important stuff. Let's create outcome, not just output. Let's not measure the number of story points. Let's measure how much more, let's say, click rates we have, how much more activity we have on the website, and so forth. These kind of stuff rarely gets measured. But yeah, you never know. Maybe we convinced some people today. Good. Key takeaways, Sander.
Yeah, so we had a few symptoms. Let's summarize the key takeaways in this sense as well. It's something that really sneaks in easily if you don't pay attention to whatever you're doing and whatever you're trying to achieve with Scrum. Scrum Masters are incredibly important when it comes to this. Make sure that people understand what Scrum is used for, what the events are for, and why we're trying to solve whatever we're trying to solve. Point north, as they call that. Product owners should be working on making people understand their sprint goals, their product goals, and usually I advise product owners to keep going and repeat on these visions or goals until people start rolling their eyes and, geez, here he comes again with his vision. At least you know it sticks. Then people know what they're expected to build. And it can happen to any team. Even if you have the best team in the world, if the organization around you doesn't change along with you and they're at a different pace, you get sort of a friction. So it can happen anywhere.
Yeah, and do frequent checks. Really, okay, are we still in a good mood? Are we doing the right thing? I mean, I was working with a Scrum team which was together for 6 years, which is, I would call it a really stable team, right? So the first thing I did when I sensed a little bit of friction, we just pulled out what is Scrum. What are we doing the same way? What are we doing in a different way? And is it good or bad what we are doing in a different way? And everyone in the team said, before we did this practice, we don't need that. We are Scrum. We are a great team. We are together forever. And I think it took me 15 minutes until I had a really heated discussion why we are not doing it based on the Scrum guide, and why are we not Scrum. So this is why it's so important. So every now and then, for example, every half year, every year, that's already quite a long time frame, but maybe even every quarter, use a retrospective just to take a look, or a separate meeting. Are we still heating in the right way? Or did we create a little solution for a problem we had, and then the solution changed something else, so we created another solution, and we pivoted away from the actual root cause of the problem. Do this frequent checks and take a look. And the other thing is communication is key. Between the Scrum Master and the team, between the Scrum Master and the PO, between, let's say, the triangle. But what is even more important, and I think this is something what a lot of people are not doing properly, is that for you, these issues might be obvious. For you, the solutions might be obvious. But is it obvious for the management? Is it obvious for the people around you? So do they understand why this issue is an actual issue for you? So I once had a Scrum Master who said, Tom, this talk, well, nothing new to me. I said, yeah, well, did you ask your manager if he understands this? Yeah, he will. So we said, okay, let's talk to him next week. We did. The manager was sitting there, never heard of it. What is that? So this aha moment, this communication also to the outside world, that these are challenges, these are issues, which can be solved if there's the right support. This is also really, really important if you do that. And this is why you should be, ideally,
continuously persevering change agents. I've heard today a few times that being a Scrum Master or being a coach in that sense can be incredibly frustrating. And it does, because there's continuous friction. But that's why the organization requires you to be the bigger person in that sense. I don't want to make it bigger than it is. But persevere, power through, and ultimately see the better for the organization and try to achieve that. And that does require that perseverance, that continuous drive. We get expected as consultants to instill the Scrum framework in 3 months. Sure, we can do that. Execute a framework, that's easy. Changing mindset, random organization changes within 3 to 7 years. Different from 3 months. So really persevere in that sense. Keep going. Don't stop. I would like to thank you all for your time and for being here.